so-called science is just full of nonsense. And in fact, a guy named Harold Hillman proved that those things we call ribosomes are gas bubbles that are formed when you stain and dying tissue. There's no such thing. Now, if there's no ribosome, there's nowhere for mRNA to be made into protein. And then the whole theory of genetics falls apart.
But you're suggesting
totally fabricated. And if anybody is interested in this, they need to read a guy named Harold Hillman, who was the master at dissecting how they came up with the idea of synapses. Like if you do a dissection of a nerve, you never see a synapse.
Right.
There's no evidence of a spike protein or anything. This is just sequences found in the dead and dying tissue. The same with this lab-created virus. They say, oh, it's a mixture of HIV and XMRV and SARS. It's not. It's just a bunch of sequences in a computer that they put together and made this new computer model. There is never been found the entire sequence of the genome in any sample anywhere. And if somebody can prove me wrong, I will publicly admit it. And I know for a fact that it can't be done because every sequence is assembled, not sequenced. That's what happens when you poison. Could be radiation, or could be chemicals, it could be thoughts, it could be feelings, it could be trauma, it could be lots of things. And you poison yourself, or the worst of it is having misconception. If you believe in make-believe, you then break yourself down because that's not good for you. Eventually you'll do stupid things like wearing a mask or injecting nanoparticles in you and stuff like that. So you poison yourself and then you break down, and they call those viruses. And they say even DNA was found with the original picture of DNA as a double helix was they dehydrated a nucleus, they extracted it with phosphoric acid, then they exposed it to 62 continuous hours of an X-ray, right? And then they show you a picture, like an X-ray picture, that looks like an X chromosome. And they say, see, that's the double helix.
Oh my.
You think, are you kidding? Like that's has nothing to do with what would be found in a living person.
Wow, I think this is super shocking. I think right now, when this video is published, I think you're going to be surprising a lot of people, because I think a lot of us have thought that biologists had figured it all out, that the human body is completely known, that cells are completely known, that what constitutes cells is completely known, the DNA, RNA is completely known. And I mean, that's the storyline we get from the industry, I think, from the medical establishment. And so they know it all at this point in time, and they're moving forward because now they can manipulate life because they understand it all so perfectly.
Right. It's a crock.
Wow. Okay, that's major. I think that's major information you're sharing with us. Did you want to talk a little bit about what your own understanding of, how people get ill really is? I mean, all of these different diseases, are they just manifestations of symptoms with different kind of stimuli that cause them, or products of detoxification, or how exactly do you understand?
The best way to understand, why we get sick is to understand what we're made of. So there is a system that we're made of, which is becoming very clear to me what the system is. So here's the system. Now, what I mean by that is these are the things you can actually see. Like, I don't have any doubt that I have a hand or that you have eyes, because I can see them. Now, when you look at a tissue and maybe a cell, although let's just say, let's say either one, what you see is a membrane, very thin membrane. You see a nucleus, you see water that's in a gel form, like structured water, right?
Okay.
It's like
Yeah.
a gel.
Yeah.
And then you see these little things called mitochondria. And that's it. That's all you can see.
That's all you can see. Wow.
That's all
Okay.
you can see. That's all you can prove is real. That makes us up. So here's the best guess as to how this works. We basically are made of areas of organized water, and the water uses different proteins and different minerals and different lipids to form, a gel that looks like this in the liver, and a slightly different type of gel formation in the kidneys, etc. Now that's attached to an antenna. So the input for making this comes from the outside. Now it's possible that actual DNA might even be the antenna. So it's like a spiral antenna, and it collects light, it collects sound, it collects wavelengths, electromagnetic frequencies, thoughts, feelings, etc. It collects those, transfers those to the water, and out of that, the water makes you.
Wow.
Now, that's the system that we're working with. The mitochondria make something called ATP, which helps the proteins unfold. It's not energy. That's a superstition. And that it's like Jello. When you make Jello, you put gelatin proteins in water, nothing happens. Then you heat it, that unfolds the proteins, and then you cool it and it makes Jello. So ATP plays the role of the heat in us, because we don't want to, put a Bunsen burner in your body. So you make this crystal, and the crystal makes the proteins. It is the code for the proteins. And the proteins make up your body. Now, there's a lot of ways that I know this, but an analogy is it's like we're a radio. Now, modern science is looking for the source of the sound inside the radio, but it's not there. It's like I was driving with a 3-year-old little friend of mine, and they heard an interview of me on the radio, and he said, "Tom, how'd you get into that box?" and that's ridiculous. But so you need a radio, right? That's the water. And the radio has an antenna, and then it collects signals from the outside, and it turns that into sound or music, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's the system that we're working with. So now it's a little more complex, but you have to have the right signals. You have to have the right sound, the right thoughts, the right feeling, and you can't have polluted, distorted water. It's like a radio that's out of tune, because a radio out of tune makes static, and that's disease.
Gotcha.
So, for instance, if you put, it's like think about Jello with poison grapes in it, right? So it's not right. Or if you put aluminum, because you injected aluminum or graphene oxide or something, mercury, and then it makes your gels distorted.
Oh my gosh, so that's what's happening actually.
Now, here's where, quote, disease comes from. So let's say you have in your lungs distorted gels, right? Because you breathed in lead.
Yeah.
Now, if that was me, what I would do is heat up the gels, right? Make them melt, and then I would flush that distorted gel out, and then I would reconstitute a better gel.
Yeah.
That's called bronchitis.
Oh, wow.
You heat up the gels, that's the fever, and then you make mucus, that's the mucus, and then you cough it out, and we unfortunately call that a disease.
But the body's doing that to actually heal itself.
That's how you're healing.
Yeah.
Because the problem is you breathed in lead, or you got a signal that's, you know, not the sun and not the earth and not your loved one and not your favorite dog, but it's
came from a cell tower next door.
It's a cell tower. And we know that distorts your gels. It gives you an abnormal signal, and then you make you that's not right. So now your joints hurt, or you have lupus or a tumor, and then you try to dissolve it, and the doctors who have no clue stop you from dissolving it. They say you have a, quote, infection, and then you get the tumor grows because you can't get rid of it, and then you die. That's how it works.
Wow, that's absolutely brilliantly explained. So I think what you've done is you've talked about your understanding of how the body works, your understanding of what disease and ill health really is, and how the body is actually fighting to bring us back to health each time, right? And the manifestation of that seems to impact on people as disease. That's the language they use. You know, this is bronchitis, that is measles, this is mumps, whatever.
Right. But those are healing attempts by the body.